Sharp Ends is a collection of my short stories, and it features all the short fiction written in the first law world. Some of those stories have already been published alongside some of the books, and some are entirely new. Some feature familiar faces such as Logen Ninefingers, Colonel Glokta, Nikamo Koska, and many, many more. Other stories feature entirely new casts of lovable rogues, deadly warriors, fearsome wizards, and other fantasy stalwarts. I think short stories are kind of a different discipline. A really good short story needs to have its own shape, its own little twist. But when I'm writing a novel, I try to give each scene its own shape. I try to make each scene to some degree stand on its own. So in a way, I think writing short stories is not a totally different discipline. It's not entirely natural for me, I think. Novels is my most comfortable length, but short stories are often fun, something to do that's slightly different. The drawback with short stories is there's a lot of preparation that goes into the characters and the voice of the narrator that, in a way, has to be done again with every short story you write. So novels are a bit more economical, and then trilogies and series of novels even more so, because hopefully by the time you've written one book from a certain character's point of view, you really have the voice and the personality of that person down, and you can just pick it up whenever you need it. So for me, trilogies are easier work than short stories. It's a difficult question to answer because in many ways my characters are all me. So this is kind of drinking alone, which you're often discouraged from doing, but which in fact I do quite a lot. My characters are a rather disreputable group on the whole, many of them sporting major personality defects, others certifiable psychopaths. So my chances of leaving alive would of course be small. I think probably if I could drink with anyone it would have to be Bayaz. You want to go to the man who really pulls the strings. Maybe I could get a couple of favours. Two characters who weren't in any of the full-length books are Java and Sheva, who are a kind of pair of characters I came up with in order to have some people to write short stories about, so they're specific short story characters. And I was inspired by Fritz Lieber's classic sword and sorcery double act, Bethod and the Grey Mouser, who are a kind of barbarian and a gutter trash thief who get into these seedy misadventures in a filthy city called Lankmar. And I wanted to imitate that classic sword and sorcery style. But since I'd used a lot of male characters, I thought I'd have a pair of unlikely female adventurers. And so Java and Sheva come up as a kind of unifying thread throughout the collection. Their stories alternate with stories featuring more familiar characters from the books, and they kind of allow me to explore the seedy misadventures of a pair of sword and sorcery heroes or heroines. One of the stories is written about the magnificent Colonel Glokta before his misfortunes and him finding his way into the Inquisition when he was still a beautiful and athletic young swordsman. It was a difficult story to write because it required me to take on the persona of a vain, arrogant, unfortunately horrible, and yet hugely handsome user. And that was a tough role for me to take on. It really required an effort of acting more than anything.